Welcome to your in-depth weekly astrology overview and zodiac forecast for week commencing the 8th of July. I'm going to share with you shortly the event chart right at the start of the week that we can all collectively relate to, but please stay with me. I will go through each of the 12 zodiac signs from Aries through to Pisces that you can relate to in terms of your ascendant, sun or the moon. I'm astrologer Patrick Arundell. If you're new to my channel, it's great to have your company. If you have any thoughts, please do share them. This is very much a community. If you're a returning visitor, all your views and interactions are truly appreciated. If you've yet to subscribe to the channel, please help it prosper and do so now. And also click the bell notification symbol. If you'd like to have a one-to-one consultation with me, please check out my testimonials below. I don't edit these, as they come in, I share is. See how other people have found working with me. If you'd like to get your free daily written horoscope fired to your device each morning, please see the link below for that. If you're a patron, all your support is truly appreciated. You can become a patron from $3 a month, and I do share a lot of extra information direct to my patrons. If you'd like to explore natal astrology and make that ascent from zodiac astrology, if you give me 3 pieces of personal birth data of time, date and place of birth, I can produce for you your life roadmap report, but also your 12 months transits. These collective energies are totally unique to each person they're produced for, but will give you searing insights. And in my special package, there is 30% off. Please see the link below. So on the screen now we have the event chart right at the start of the week, and the big takeout is that on Monday, Mercury, the planet of marketing, and Jupiter, the planet of trade, are connecting in a really brilliant way. If there is something that you're wanting to do that's more entrepreneurial, that combination can be seriously lucky. But we also have this week a much steadier link between the Sun and Saturn. Saturn in the sign of culmination Pisces is coming to the end of its overall 29.5-year journey, which will complete next year. But it's just suggesting that things we've worked on in the past and we've been very patient and applied to, we can see things shaping up in terms of our physical world, but perhaps also in terms of our emotional reality. And they're going to come together in a very enabling link exactly on Thursday. But we've also got a magical link this week, which also peaks on Thursday, between Venus and Neptune. Neptune, like Saturn, is in the sign of Pisces and can be very ephemeral. It also can be very magical and mystic, but the link to Venus suggests that if there is a connection we're enjoying, and it doesn't have to be romantic, but one that just gives us a sense of wholeness, of a really beautiful understanding. It could be through a shared interest, a hobby. It may even be through watching a film or listening to some music that really moves our senses. But if you are meeting someone for the first time, that is a really lovely aspect to have applying. But we've also got on Thursday Venus, the planet of relating, moving into the sign of Leo. Now that brings some star quality to Venus, to be honest, and over the next few weeks it's a great opportunity for us all to enjoy mixing and mingling, to also strut our stuff with a little bit more self-confidence. But it does go into a very strong opposition with Pluto on Friday. What we need to be mindful of is the sign of Leo is very much about me, or creating our individual brilliance. The sign of Aquarius is very much about us. If there is a relationship where you want different things, it's possible that that can become much more obvious at this time, particularly as towards the end of this week Mars applies to Uranus. Now that combination is going to peak next Monday the 15th, but it will be building up and it will be creating the potential for a lot of unsettledness, particularly if we're talking to someone who can be very stubborn, or we take a very fixed approach, or we're very attached to a particular way of doing things. So we all need to stay as flexible as possible around relationships, not least because on Saturday there is a quarter moon in the sign of relating, Libra. Now on the face of it, you would have thought that that's good, but the clash with the sun's very much more protective. It's about our own instinct to keep ourselves safe and secure. And it may be that someone sees something around that relationship scenario so differently that that could be a challenge. But we could also find ourselves stuck in the middle, playing a referee, if you like, between two people we're fond of who are not getting on so well. And it may be someone very close to us, like a family member. So to recap, this is a week which starts off in a very enterprising way. There are opportunities to build on work, effort that's gone in, even materially or emotionally, over a long period of time to get that greater sense of security. But we can also enjoy some magic with the link between Venus and Neptune. But Venus moving into Leo demands a lot of attention. And if that attention doesn't work for one person in a partnership, or two people don't want the same thing from the future, the Pluto position in Aquarius, or there's some kind of power dynamic going on. And just be mindful, when Venus and Pluto go into connections, very often relationships are all in or all out, but they can also be a lot of charm used to disguise desire, and that desire can be used to leverage us. So whether it's around intimacy or it's around money, if you meet someone who love bombs you at the end of this week, you need to be a little bit skeptical about what their motives are. But that combination between Mars and Uranus can make a lot of us much more outspoken, and also perhaps a little bit more rebellious, particularly around our resources. So if we've been keeping it very disciplined, we might find ourselves being more impetuous. If we have been a little bit free and easy with our money, someone could remind us of our responsibilities. And then by the end of this week, it's back into trying to balance the emotional dimension of the sun in Cancer with how we relate to others. I hope you have a great week. Please stay with me as I go through each of the signs from Aries through to Pisces. Welcome Aries to your in-depth weekly forecast for week commencing the 8th of July for the Ascendant, the Sun or the Moon. Right at the start of this week, you could have an incredibly important conversation. Your enthusiasm for an idea, a business or a connection, perhaps even a romantic connection, could be very, very strong. With Venus moving into your 5th house, at the heart of this week, if you really do want to bring some extra magic to your social situation, the weeks ahead can really light up for you. You're entering a period that's much more playful, much more self-expressive, but you're coming to the end of a period which has been very much to do with security. But you know, you can actually celebrate the things that have been building up slowly, perhaps in an incremental way, that you've been working patiently on with the great link between the Sun and Saturn. But it's a conversation you have right at the start of this week which really brings a sense of excitement and positivity. Seize it with both hands. As the week goes on, however, Mars, your ruler, starts to meet with Uranus, the planet of change, but the planet of restlessness. Now that alliance becomes exact on the week following this one, on Monday the 15th. That energy at the end of this week could see you feeling quite impulsive. For example, if someone's trying to impose their point of view in terms of their values upon you, you may find yourself uncharacteristically outspoken. Then again, you may decide to have a splurge yourself, particularly if you've really been very disciplined over a long period of time. The temptation to do something completely off the cuff can be very strong indeed. Now, if there is someone you're really attracted to, the fact that Venus moves into your 5th house and Mars is applying to Uranus could see you want to really spoil them, perhaps with a grand gesture. I would try to resist that. By the end of this week, there's a quarter moon in the sign of relating, Libra, which is your opposite sign. And if there is someone that you're drawn to, or someone that you're working with at the current time, and you're not quite sure of how to progress this interest, the key to it is not trying too hard. So Mars applying to Uranus could make you very impatient, and it could see you trying to take a shortcut when it's better to keep going patiently, because once the Sun moves into the sign of Leo on the 22nd, it's going to be all systems go for you, Aries, and you're entering a really outstanding part of the year. But don't rush it. If there's something you really want, someone you're really drawn to, or a business idea you've got, that patience you've been showing recently is still going to be very important indeed. I hope you have a great week, and if you've yet to subscribe to the channel, please do so now. Welcome Taurus to your in-depth weekly forecast for week commencing the 8th of July. If we think back to when Saturn moved 15 months ago into your sector of your future plans, but also friendships, I feel a lot has changed. Before then, Neptune since 2012 has been very inspirational, but at times there may have been some disappointments. But I think over that last 15 months, you've been able to sift through and make sense of what you really want from your future, but also who's really for you. So there may have been some people who've made way. Now this can be a week when you can have some very solid conversations, very practical conversations about those future plans, and they can come together in a very positive step-by-step way. But you can also have some connections that are absolutely delightful, with your ruler Venus aligning with Neptune in a really mystical but lovely way. If there is someone you're talking to who does capture your imagination, you really can feel like tripping the light fantastic. But if you have been working on some kind of home change or home-based project, or hobby craft, or perhaps even a small home business, the link between Mercury and Jupiter at the start of this week can be really lucky. And then when Venus moves to join up with Mercury on Thursday, your interest in developing this could grow even stronger. But equally, you could find yourself redecorating over the following few weeks, reshaping your home in some way, whether it is through new furnishings, moving things around, decluttering. Venus wants you to have the most gracious, peaceful, and, if you can, glamorous home possible. But Mars in your sign starts to connect to Uranus, which has been so provocative to you since March 2019. And if there is any situation that still requires a bit of a shakeout, so for example, if you're not quite so sure about your long-term future, if you don't feel you're in the right job, the right profession, the right relationship, the right friendship circle, despite the stability that the Sun and Saturn create this week, that combination between Mars and Uranus, which peaks on the 15th of July, is really going to give you a lot of edge. And if there's something that you feel is unjust or is confining you or stopping you being the person you really want to be, a much more militant version of your nature can shine through. But as the week draws to a close, there is a quarter moon. It's in your 6th house, which can be to do with virtue. So if you are making some changes at home, the desire to do those do-it-yourself jobs can really become much stronger. But as the week closes, I just wouldn't give yourself too long a list of chores to get through. Just really prioritise about what's important as this week closes, because otherwise you could end up overdoing it and feeling a little bit stressed out. I hope you have a great week, Taurus. Thank you for joining me, and if you've yet to do so, please subscribe to the channel. Welcome Gemini to your in-depth weekly forecast for week commencing the 8th of July for the Ascendant, the Sun or the Moon. Your marvellous ruler Mercury forges such an epiphyseal link to the planet of fortune Jupiter in your sign on Monday exactly. But through the first half of this week, they're really connecting to each other positively. Your ideas, often very important to you, are given extra animation, but also an extra amount of superpower. So if there's something you're really interested in, enthusiastic about, don't turn down the volume. This is your chance to really articulate what's important to you. But the sun has been making its way through the part of your situation to do with everyday resources, but also your values, your self-worth. And it is balanced by Saturn, the planet of restraint, but in a very constructive way. That reaches a peak on Thursday. If you have been trying to economise, but at the same time be progressive in terms of work, professional hopes, because Saturn in your 10th house could have meant that you've taken on extra responsibility or you've been setting your goals even higher. But it could mean also that something you had been doing hasn't been working as well. Perhaps a job has come to a close. But I think what you can do with this particular alliance is really see how far you've come and how much you've made the most of whatever your personal circumstances are. Now, Venus, also in your 2nd house, hopefully has given you a boost financially recently. But that forges a really lovely link to Neptune, also right at the heart of the week on Thursday. This is an interesting one, I feel. If you are someone who's able to get together with someone that you're fond of, have a nice meal, have a little bit of a chat and a catch up, you may find yourselves really reminiscing, really having a good laugh, but also coming up with some quite brilliant ideas. But on Thursday, Venus does move into the sign of Leo to join up with your ruler Mercury. Venus in Leo is going to give your word power even more sucra over the next few weeks. It's almost as if it's not exactly what you're saying that counts so much. People are really attuned to just your personality, your mode of expression. Now, if you're someone who loves to go on your local karaoke, that could be something you can really enjoy with this transition. But seriously, if you are someone who's got something to say, you can articulate it with that much more charm and persuasion. But Venus does go face to face with Pluto on Friday. And however much you do try to get your point of view across delicately, it may be that someone sees what you're trying to say in a bit of a sinister way. Pluto can often be a little bit like that. So just watch out. There could be a bit of a tussle because your ideas or someone else's ideas don't quite marry. Now, towards the end of the week, Mars applies to Uranus. It becomes exact right at the start of next week. But I would say that this is possibly one of the most challenging aspects you could have at the current time, because for many people who've got a Gemini ascendant or a Gemini sun that's beyond the position of Uranus at the moment, so late Gemini, Uranus is essentially in your 12th house. So Mars moving into that position can stir up a lot of sediment, but particularly towards your past and maybe unresolved angers, frustrations, injustices that you've experienced. Whatever it is, something could come up, and it could come up in quite a surprising and reactive way. So you may find yourself being a little more easily triggered than is usually the case. So if there are people that you encounter that you're not so keen on, just be aware that it's probably best to give them a little bit of a wide berth and focus on what is important to you in your inner world at the present time. But certainly as the week draws to a close and the quarter moon occurs in your sister air sign of Libra, you could be tempted to splash out, be a bit more frivolous. But if you've really earned it from all that application and care that you've been taking around resources, why not? Have a great week, Gemini. Thank you for joining me. And if you've yet to subscribe to the channel, please do so now. Welcome, Cancer, to your in-depth weekly forecast for week commencing the 8th of July for the Ascendant, the Sun or the Moon. I generally don't like to talk about money alone because I feel that money is an exchange of energy. But money could feature quite strongly in your chart this week, but in a very positive way. Not in terms of games of chance, more in terms of what you can do yourself. Right at the start of this week, Jupiter, lying deep in your 12th house, could give you some kind of inspirational idea. Its link to Mercury in your 2nd house could give you the chance to monetize this idea quicker than you think. Also, with Venus moving out of your sign and into the sign of Leo on Thursday, that definitely can bring some kind of improvement to your income over the following few weeks. Now, it is confronted by the powerful energy of Pluto. It's possible that you could be offered something towards the end of this week, and it could be very tempting, but you do need to make sure that you analyse what's being offered very carefully. But that's where the link between the Sun in your sign and the steady eddy of the zodiac Saturn in your ninth house can work so well for you, because Saturn can help you to scrutinise information in a very acute way. But at the end of the day, the things you've been working on recently have required a lot of your personal investment and your determination to make things work. And it's possible that someone's coming in that you do need to work with, but they're going to want their part of the cake, their portion, if you like. So there could be a little bit of a push and pull on the back of Venus's opposition to Pluto. But you know, Venus moving into the second house can also be very sensual, and Pluto in your eighth house, very sexual. Is there someone that you're set to find absolutely irresistible this week? Because with Venus, just before it moves into Leo, forging a beautiful link to Neptune, it may be a shared interest, a journey, meeting at some kind of group, that you start talking to someone that you realise actually is very, very attractive to you in some ways. And that allure can become even stronger as this week draws to a close. But the interesting thing about it, Cancer, is this person could be radically different from you. And that actually could lead you to feel a little bit on edge. Because as Mars starts to connect to Uranus as the week draws to a close, if you are unsure about your long-term future, that particular aspect, which peaks on Monday next week, could see you make a big about turn about a long-term plan, or it could see you break free of a group of people that you've been quite invested in before, or perhaps break free of a relationship that's not working for you. Because Venus opposite Pluto is all about the politics of relating, but also the politics of money. And money often, really, when we boil it all down, is often to do with our values. So if you're connecting to someone this week who doesn't share your values, that's going to become much more obvious as the week draws to a close. The quarter moon in your fourth house, very Cancerian, clashes with the Sun in your sign. You could find yourself in a rare situation where do you do what's right for you, the individual, or do you preserve some security and stability? But that link between Mars and Uranus is pushing you to twist rather than stick. So if there's any part of your situation that you're not really very happy about at the present time, despite the fact the Sun links with Saturn in a very stable way, there's another part of you that may want to be much more daring and break free from something that just isn't working. So I think this is a week where you can do well financially, or at least better financially, but you may have to take the less trodden path in order to really get the results and the reward. And certainly in any facet of your situation, if you do feel penned in, I think you're going to surprise a few people by just how emboldened and daring you can be. Have a great week, Cancer. Thank you for joining me. And if you've yet to subscribe to the channel, please do so now. Welcome, Leo, to your in-depth weekly forecast for week commencing the 8th of July for the Ascendant, the Sun, or the Moon. Astrology is very much about cycles, and the part of the year that you've been working through recently has been, for you, somewhat more reflective. But the time you've been taking to think things over, perhaps even have some time out, has actually been really restorative. But also this week, you can see in a very firm and tangible way how all the hard work and effort you've put in over a long period of time is starting to come together really positively as the Sun links to the planet of stability, Saturn. But there's also some very charismatic energy starting to develop in your situation. Not least that Mercury in your sign is sparkling effervescently with Jupiter, the planet of fortune, right at the start of this week. A key contact or friend, or even someone you're drawn to romantically, can really create a sense of excitement. This is going to be accented even more when Venus, the planet of relating, but also of money, moves into your sign on Thursday. Now, Venus does go face to face with the power broker of the zodiac, Pluto, almost straight away. If there is something you want to change in terms of your personal appearance, this is a great chance for you to recast your identity in a very dynamic way. But someone close to you may not necessarily be completely in agreement. But this is one of those times when you really have to follow what's truly right for you. But professionally, as Mars, the planet of passion, drive, but also for you at the current time, assertion, starts to merge with the planet of surprises, Uranus. If there is something professionally or goal orientated you want to set your sights upon, as this week develops, this is not a time to be too mindful about what other people think. It's a time to have total conviction on the things that really inspire you. And if you're wanting to go for a new job, do a presentation, or in some ways revitalize an ongoing situation in a fresh and perhaps bolder way, this is a great opportunity to do it. Now, there is a quarter moon as this week draws to a close. We have two a month, they intersect the new and full moons. This one in the gracious sign of Libra for you is your third house. That's everyday communication. But it does square up with the sun, still in that more reflective area. This 12th third house energy could see some gossip doing the rounds. If there is something tender that you're processing towards the end of the week, therefore, just be mindful of who you open up and share this with. Someone could seize on a tidbit, and before you know it, other people know your business in a way which wouldn't be good for you. It's been a real pleasure being with you, Leo. I hope you have a great week, and thanks so much for joining me. Welcome, Virgo, to your in-depth weekly forecast for week commencing the 8th of July. There are a number of contrasting energies at play this week. On Monday, there's a terrific link between your ruler Mercury, now sheltered in your 12th house, very much to do with thinking about things deeply, perhaps even privately, is linking with Jupiter, which is in a very open and very upbeat part of your situation. Jupiter's about opportunities. The combination of these two energies suggests a discreet conversation, some soundings you're taking, or some market research could pay off handsomely, but not necessarily straight away. But then again, the sun in the 11th house, very much to do with your future direction, your friendships and connections, is forging a very stable link to the stern Saturn. If there are people in your situation that you really can rely upon, I think you're going to be celebrating those contacts this week. But then again, there's another part of your nature that could feel really daring. And that's because Mars, the planet of risk, is applying to Uranus, the planet of change. And at the end of this week, that can give you an appetite to be much more on the front foot, but particularly when it comes to your independence. If you have been seeing someone recently and you're not quite sure that this is the right involvement, with Venus, the planet of relating, joining Mercury on Thursday in that very private area, the 12th house, the combination of that, its opposition to the planet of change, Pluto, but Mars is linked to Uranus, can just give you that extra confidence to reassert your individuality, but possibly your independence. But if you're in a relationship that you're much more committed to, you're invested in, perhaps have been in for a much longer period of time, but you do feel in some ways hemmed in, these set of influences is urging you to reconnect to some personal interests. Do you know, you could find by actually doing some things on a solo basis that can reignite the spark between you. But the quarter moon, which brings the curtain down on this week, on Saturday, occurs in the part of your situation to do with everyday resources. And the link back to the sun in that 11th house, the future, your connections, your group activities, but also your higher principles, suggests if you're not quite meshing with someone around a financial matter, or perhaps a point of principle, you will need to face this as this week draws to a close. But with Mars applying to Uranus in such an intense way, if there is something that's been bubbling beneath the surface that you've not felt quite happy about, you're going to find that you will express it, and in a very upfront, direct way, as this week ends and the new week begins. It's been a pleasure being with you, Virgo. Thank you so much for joining me. Have a great week, and bye for now. Welcome, Libra, to your in-depth weekly forecast for week commencing the 8th of July for the Ascendant, the Sun or the Moon. You've been working very hard of late, I feel, and the link this week between the Sun in Cancer, which is very much about responsibilities, your role in life, your connection to the wider world, but can be about goals, is linking perfectly to Saturn, the planet which is very much about industry and application. And if you really have been applying yourself to the maximum amount, you can start to see how all that effort is building up into something that's very tangible, and that can be hugely pleasing. But that doesn't mean to say that you shouldn't showcase your more creative talents as well. But there could be something you're discussing in the early part of this week, which is much more to do with pleasure. Getting together with people that you really enjoy the company of. If you are travelling or planning a trip, perhaps with a group of people, your timing on Monday will prove to be impeccable. But on Thursday, Venus, your ruler, glides into a new home, the sign of Leo. If you recall, Venus went through Leo for 4 months last year. This year, it's back to its normal transition, but it is going to go into an opposition with Pluto. That's going to make you much more conscious of your attractiveness, but also how that connects out to other people, or is it one person in particular? If you are in a relationship, it's a good thing to remember the things that you share in common. Very few relationships are absolutely perfect. But if you'd like to meet someone, it could be through an introduction of a friend or some kind of social event or a shared interest which does steer someone in your direction. But your ability to pull someone to you can be acute right at the start of this week. But you know, if you're in a relationship and you don't see it being there for your long term, the combination between Mars and Uranus in the latter part of this week could see you much more conscious about thinking about how you might want to separate. It's a quite rocky alliance, to be honest. Mars, of course, can be very impulsive. Uranus in the 8th house can see us wanting to detach from where we've been very close. So something could come to a quick end, or then again, you can find yourself having a passionate connection to someone. But then on Saturday, there's a quarter moon in your sign. As much as the Sun has been encouraging you to think about work, your connections to the world at large, and responsibilities, this quarter moon saying, don't let it go too much against what you need as an individual. So if you're making progress and you're comfortable with the environment you work in, I don't feel that this quarter moon will show up. But if you're working in a situation where you do feel thwarted, it's not really with the people you'd like to be with, I think you are being asked to think again. But with Mercury and Venus now in your sector of networking, it could be a contact or some kind of mutual acquaintance that could prove crucial in finding the right kind of role for you over the next few weeks. Have a great week, Libra. Thank you for joining me. And if you've yet to subscribe, please do so now. Welcome, Scorpio, to your in-depth weekly forecast for week commencing the 8th of July for the Ascendant, Sun or the Moon. You have a happy knack of engaging with situations in a very shrewd way, often prizing open the opportunities by digging deep and seeing what lays beyond what's obvious. But that can also make you a tad on the cautious side. But this is a week when it's important not to let that caution pulverize your passion. Mercury, the planet of communication, is in a very visible part of your situation, which can see you interacting with influential people. It's also connecting to Jupiter, the planet of fortune, in your sector of long-term finance. So whether you're looking to rejig your mortgage, squeeze more from your assets, do some kind of presentation or have an interview, there's every chance that your confidence can shine through. Now, the sun continues in your sister water sign of Cancer, which is very much to do with nurture, but nurture for you at the present time can come through knowledge. And because the sun is in a very stable link with Saturn right throughout the week, Saturn, the planet of structure, if there is something creative that you're developing, you can be very methodical, but still have that extra slice of self-belief. But on Thursday, Venus, the planet of charm, but also of relating and money, moves to join with Mercury right at the top of your chart. And there's an opportunity to use your people skills and also diplomacy to just add that much extra luster to what Mercury's already given you. But with Mars, your traditional ruler, moving forwards and applying to Uranus, the planet of change, as this week draws to a close, when it comes to your relationship situation, this could give you the spark of being a bit more daring. So if there is someone that you're drawn towards, all these planetary influences give you a fantastic opportunity to seize the moment. It is true that there is a quarter moon at the end of this week tucked up in your 12th house, which can be very psychological and be very sensitive. If something is a little bit tricky towards the end of the week, it is possible that it can affect you more than it would ordinarily do. And if it is about a relationship situation, it may be because you have a frank discussion. Uranus is the planet that rules the sky, but it is about higher truths, and it is in your relationship sector. But the hustle bustle energies of Mars applying to Uranus could mean that there is going to be that very direct conversation. But you know, if that does happen, and even if it is unsettling, at least you'll know that things are out in the open. But when it comes to your professional situation and long-term finances, this is certainly a very proactive and positive week for you. Have a great week, Scorpio. Thanks for joining me. Good luck and goodbye. Welcome, Sagittarius, to your in-depth weekly forecast for week commencing the 8th of July for the ascendant, the sun or the moon. Now you have a real appreciation of freedom, adventure, independence, but certainly knowledge and the opportunity to share information or knowledge right at the start of this week is very strong as Mercury links to your ruler Jupiter. Now, it could be you're going to have a really key piece of dialogue, perhaps to do with a presentation, a proposal or contract, and it could prove to be very lucky. But also Venus, the planet of relating, moves to join with Mercury into your sister fire sign of Leo. And that is going to trigger around a relationship situation a desire to really get to the truth or the nub of whatever's going on. Now, because there's been such a lot of intensity around your life recently, whether it is around some transformations, whether it's around long-term finance, a property matter, family politics, it's been quite heavy stuff. And as Mars applies to Uranus towards the end of this week, if you feel you've been going beyond the call of duty, really trying very hard, and other people aren't really showing the same amount of commitment, two things can happen. One part of you could become very frustrated, even irritable, that you're not getting the same amount of effort and commitment back from the other person. But also at the same time, you may feel that need to break through, which can often be strong, is really heightened. And if a relationship is weak, the fact that Venus goes face to face with Pluto on Thursday could see a very important but perhaps turbulent conversation. Now, because as the week draws to a close, the moon's in a very friendly location. If you can get together with some people who are good fun, perhaps a bit different, if you're traveling somewhere, all of those things can be really stimulating to you. But the square back to the sun in the 8th house could mean that if there is someone close to you who tends to be possessive, jealous, perhaps a little bit controlling, that's something that could really press your buttons. So I think you've been trying very, very hard on working on some big issues, seeing some progress, but that other more traditional side of your nature, which just likes to break out, be more flamboyant, be more spontaneous, that's definitely got to shine through this week. And if anyone tries to stop or limit that, that could be the trigger point. Have a great week, Sagittarius. Thank you for joining me. If you've yet to subscribe, please do so now. Welcome, Capricorn, to your in-depth weekly forecast for week commencing the 8th of July for the Ascendant, the Sun or the Moon. In recent weeks, with Cancer season, that's your sector of relating, and last week's new moon crystallised an opportunity to convey how you feel about things to others in a much more powerful way. Now, whether other people have been responsive is another matter, but if you do need to discuss something this week, and it doesn't have to be in a romantic context, but you're linking with someone, trying to present your views, as your ruler Saturn applies to the Sun, you can say what you need to say with a lot of conviction, but also authority. But there can be some flirty possibilities too, with Neptune in a beautiful alliance to Venus. But also right at the start of the week, the two planets to do very much with trade, Mercury and Jupiter, are forging a really excellent alliance. If you are running a business from home or providing services in your local community, that could be a real lightning point for something good to start flowing through. But on Thursday, Venus joins Mercury in the sign of Leo. But as Venus moves, it goes face to face with Pluto. And if you are talking about a financial matter, things could get a lot trickier. It's also true that in a relationship that may have been developing quite nicely, if there is a real electricity between you, that can really reach an ignition point at this part of the week. Particularly as Mars, the planet of passion, connects with Uranus as the week draws to a close. So if you're lucky enough to be moving from dialogue and attraction and trying to understand one another, something could really heat up in terms of that passion. But what about if your situation is not to do with your romantic sphere? It's much more to do with relating and perhaps a financial opportunity. Well, it's possible that you could get a little bit frustrated with Mars applying to Uranus if you feel that somebody's not recognizing the gifts that you're sharing, the ideas you have. But Venus opposite Pluto requires some care and perhaps even a little bit of stealth. The most important thing is to understand what the key motive is, yours but the other side. So if you are negotiating something, try to keep your impatience that could be primed by Mars's alliance with Uranus under check, because if you can just get through this part of the week, sharing how you feel but also acknowledging how the other side feels, hopefully some kind of mutual agreement which works for both sides can unfold. But if you're single, I certainly think that link between Mars and Uranus and Venus and Pluto could see you drawn towards someone with a magnetic energy. Whether it would be a long-lasting connection is another matter. The week ends with a quarter moon in the sign of relating, Libra. Your feelings are going to be close to the surface, and if there is a situation where you're still not feeling that the other side is acknowledging what you have to offer, I think Mars combining with Uranus may see you want to go off and do something completely different and have a change of scene and perhaps revisit the opportunity early next week. It's been a real pleasure being with you, Capricorn. Have a great week. If you've yet to subscribe to my channel, please do so now. Welcome, Aquarius, to your in-depth weekly forecast for week commencing the 8th of July for the Ascendant, the Sun or the Moon. There are some really contrasting energies playing out in your situation this week. In a lighter way, the connection between Jupiter in a very generous and very demonstrative part of your scope to Mercury, the planet of communication in your sector of relating, could see some kind of delightful conversation, perhaps even a little bit of a flirty one. But if you are sharing something that's important to you, a creative project, you can certainly articulate it really well. But also, in a more practical context, Saturn, your traditional ruler, which has been pushing you over the last 15 months to work on resources, to work on your sense of self-worth, bit by bit, refining things, and perhaps in some ways focusing on what's really essential and not spreading yourself or your point of interest too wide. It's really been about what's at the heart of your situation. And it may not have been easy, but the link between Saturn and the Sun this week in the 6th house, which is very much about details, refinement, can be about health, fitness and diet, but also work. So just the lessons you've learnt with Saturn over the last year and a quarter, you can really start to measure them and see how far you've come, which could be very valuable to you. But Venus joins Mercury in the very glamorous sign of Leo on Thursday. And you know, having Mercury and Venus in the 7th house can be very constructive. But if you recall, when Mercury moved on the 2nd of July, it went face to face with Pluto on the 3rd. And now we have Venus going into Leo and going face to face with Pluto on Friday. As much as there could be an opportunity to build a collaboration, work in a way where cooperation is really important, bit of give and take, and also perhaps even creating greater harmony in an existing tie, that's really exciting. But if there are any politics that have been simmering beneath the surface, Pluto could bring them into the open. But also the potentially explosive link between Mars and your modern ruler of Uranus towards the end of this week suggests if someone's not getting how you feel, and it's also perhaps even being quite provoking towards you, it may be much more difficult to keep your emotions in check. Because when Mars and Uranus get together, Mars brings a sense of impatience but also defensiveness in the 4th house. And Uranus can of course be very unpredictable, and it's therefore possible that in a relationship that isn't working very well, that could be a point which causes some kind of big upset, if I'm honest. But equally, a relationship issue may not show up with Mars conjunct Uranus, and actually that combination can give you more impulse to make some changes to where you live. For example, if you have been putting up with some accommodation that really is too small, too big, not suitable, in the wrong location, Mars's energy and urgency can give you the push with Uranus's help to make that change, because Uranus is about change. But it could be that you're going to do some kind of renovation to an existing home, repainting, remodeling in some way, new furnishings, moving things around, decluttering. All of those things are possible. As the week draws to a close, however, there is a quarter moon in your sister air sign of Libra. And the 6th, 9th house energy to the Sun can see us bite off a bit more than we can chew. So if you are trying to clear things up, make refinements, move things around, don't try to take on too much. And I feel that with Mercury and Venus and Jupiter all in very strong locations, particularly once Venus gets beyond that opposition to Pluto, finding ways to meet with others in whatever context, whether it is around shared interest, around a sports team, around something that really both inspires you, that can be really very positive. But it's also a chance to bring some kind of improvement to your relationships in general. And a lot of it with Mercury and Venus in the 7th house is refining our listening skills and understanding that when people see things differently, it doesn't necessarily make them bad people, it just makes them different. I hope you have a great week. Thank you for joining me. If you've yet to subscribe, please do so now. Welcome Pisces to your in-depth weekly forecast for week commencing the 8th of July for the Ascendant, the Sun or the Moon. Sometimes astrology serves up some very basic fare, and at other times much more enchanting possibilities. Now you've got a mixture of both, but both come from energy in your sign. Saturn, which has probably been very testing over the last 15 months in terms of your vitality. Maybe you've had to narrow your focus. Some things you were doing have just made way because you've had to really concentrate on what's essential. Forges a link to the Sun in the part of your scope to do with showcasing your talent, your flair, your creativity. And if you've really applied yourself, there can be a sense that you're really making progress, but also you can receive recognition for your talents. But it might not just be through that application and perspiration, and that's where the other influence comes in, which is much more otherworldly, and that's between Neptune in your sign, your ruler, and also Venus, because that's going to help you to convey your message in a way which is much less tangible, but it is very Piscean, because it's about communicating energy, and that energy can be something that pulls people towards you. Now, possibly someone could be interested in you romantically, but also it could just be in terms of a social situation. You just have a really lovely time, whether it's a gathering, you go to see a band, a show, a film, but if you're with friends, it could turn out to be very lovely indeed. Also, your traditional ruler Jupiter is in your fourth house, but linking with Mercury in a very practical area. If you are wanting to be very positive about something to do with where you live, you've got it all there, the self-belief, Jupiter, but also the detailing that comes from Mercury. But as the week goes on, Venus does make its way out of your sister water sign of Cancer and into the fire sign of Leo. Here, Venus can certainly strut her stuff, but for you it is the sixth house, which is very much to do with work, can be to do with our health and diet. If you are someone who's wanting to adhere to a pretty strict regime when it comes to what you eat and drink, you could be tempted with that Leonian energy to drop your guard a little bit. But almost immediately Venus goes into an opposition with the power broker of the zodiac, the ruler of the underworld, Pluto. In a professional relationship, something could come up over the following 2 days. It may be that someone's very good or seems very pleasant to work with, but actually they're wanting you to do more for them, but they're very skilled in conveying what they want in a way that makes it difficult for you to say no. But if you do feel that leverage is being applied, then it is important to know where to stand your ground. And because Mars, the planet of passion, is moving through the very fast and articulate Gemini, if you do need to find your voice, it's linked to Uranus, which is going to become exact on the 15th of July at the start of next week, but it is manifesting towards the end of this week. You could find yourself being much more outspoken, but also you could find yourself being much more restless. So towards the end of this week, if you can find some ways to increase the exercise you do, the walking, the swimming, the cycling, the aerobics, the gym work, that's going to be good because it will burn off some of the excess. But if you have got really positive ideas you want to share, particularly if they're a bit novel or different, don't feel that you should hold back. Have the confidence to convey them. It might not necessarily meet with instant approval by everyone, but someone could actually find the spark that you're conveying really compelling and really attractive too. Have a great week, Pisces. Thank you for joining me, and if you've yet to subscribe to the channel, please do so now.